In September, I took my almost annual pilgrimage to the Slippery Ann Elk Viewing Area located within the Charles M. Russel National Wildlife Refuge to photograph the Elk Rut. The refuge is located along the Missouri River in central Montana. I had a day off early from work, so I left Great Falls that afternoon and headed east. I made a quick stop in Lewistown along the way for some gas and snacks. We first started watching the elk on the viewing area back in the early 80s when we were living in the small town of Roy, not far from the refuge. This location has held a special place in my heart for over 40 years now. Of course, I have seen a lot of changes to the viewing experience in that amount of time. The spot has certainly been discovered, and the crowds have grown larger almost every year in recent memory. I must admit, I miss the days of my youth when things were much quieter out there. There have also been a lot of improvements to the roads in the refuge, which may have encouraged the crowds as well. It was not too long ago that if there had been any rain on the roads, they were almost impassable. Now the roads are pretty well graveled, but they do get pretty bouncy at times from the washboards that form from all the traffic. Just this year, they completed putting in a new bridge on the road as well. Since I still have family in Lewistown, I just went over for the evening and then drove back to Lewistown to stay the night. There are several options to camp in the area, however, if you are coming in from out of town. The James Kipp Campground is one popular spot, which is just off the highway and next to the Missouri River, not far from the refuge. There are also two established smaller camping areas, with one on each end of the viewing area, and then another area above for self-contained campers, which has recently been expanded. The road into the viewing area is part of the refuge's auto tour route, so there are several pullouts along the way that offer great views of the river and the breaks country that dominates the landscape. Keep your eyes open, as besides elk, you may see deer, pronghorn antelope, wild turkeys, or many other species. Eventually you do drop down into the river bottom as you approach the viewing area. You can never be sure where the elk are going to be year to year or even night to night. Sometimes they are right as you enter the viewing area in the trees just opposite the RV park. Or sometimes, like this evening, they are all the way at the opposite end. With it still being very warm this afternoon, most of the elk were lying down in the shade of the trees when I arrived. As it got later into the afternoon, eventually another herd of elk started to filter out of the willows. The bull in this group hung back for a while, raking his antlers on the willows as a sign of dominance. Eventually he came out to join the cows in the open. As the evening got cooler and more elk continued to appear, the bulls started to get more active. As always, it was awesome to watch.
Look at that one running. He's limping over there. Last one.
I still think Slippery Ann is a good place to photograph elk, but I don't enjoy it as much as I used to. The crowds have just reached a point where it is impossible to even pretend you are anywhere wild. The constant sounds of side-by-sides driving back and forth, people just being loud, having full-on barbecues and parties along the road has all become too much for me. I typically try and edit around the background noises in my videos, but I intentionally left them in this time to illustrate the reality of the experience. Photography to me is supposed to be an escape and a way to decompress in nature, but I have found that almost impossible here now. I guess you can call me old-fashioned, but I feel like nature's beauty is something that should be observed and appreciated with a certain amount of reverence and not something to be turned into a tailgate party. I just want to be able to hear all the sounds of nature and not the guy flipping burgers next to me on his grill. If you are ever out in nature, here or anywhere else, I would encourage you to be considerate of your fellow viewers and the animals you're observing, and be as quiet as possible and just enjoy the experience. Typically I stay until dark, as often the elk come closer to the road as the night goes on. But this evening they actually got farther away. I can't help but wonder if the crowds don't have something to do with that. Since I left early, it did cut down on the amount of driving in the dark I had to do. If you want more information about visiting the Slippery Ann Elk Viewing Area, please check in the description of this video for a link to my website. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing.